I'll give a little brief history of how Jody and I happened to wind up traveling together, having never met until there was a contest called the Chickadee Chaps and Broads Broadside Poetry Contest in January. And so you submit poetry to the contest, and if your poem is selected as the winner of the contest, then they give the poem to an artist, and the artist creates a illustration, and then it's printed hand letterpress at the Mayday studio in Montpelier. And so it was really interesting. I entered the contest, and my poem was selected, and Jody Gladding was the judge. And so part of the program was that for Poetry Month in April, I was asked and invited to read in Montpelier, and as was Jody, so that's where we met after having read each other's work but never run into each other. And then it turns out we don't live that far apart. This poem is entitled Overture. Jump, frog, into the wind, and see how far you go, how distant you settle. Come, caterpillar, together we'll search and find and know to resolve. Come. Too many legs, frog. Wind alone will not lift me now, but neither shall earth ground me forever. Go, frog, ride the puff while you can. And this next poem, I guess when you spend a lot of time in Vermont going to the dump or the transfer station, as it is now called, and the recycling, you think of all kinds of things while you're depositing. And so this next poem came about as a result of that, and it is called Recycling Day. Everything unpacks easily from my green canvas tote. Regrets here, aspirations there, and promise just beyond the corrugated. Perhaps I'll pick something up while I'm here. Amazing what people throw away. I was traveling for work last year and wound up in this little town in somewhere, I think it was in New York State, called Ardsley. And we were there, I was there with a colleague very, very early in the morning, and it was very warm day in I think it was August, it may have been July, but it was fascinating to watch people come and go at 7 o'clock in the morning in this bakery in Ardsley. So the result of the poem, or the result of the trip was called Morning in Ardsley. Margaret scuffs through the wooden door, her spindle frame wobbled by an uneven threshold, an effort to clutch tight her woolen scarf. Stripes of faded red, green, and yellow shouting against a once plum parka and sparse gray-white hair. Past Anthony, shaved head, cup level to stir 4 packets of sugar into coffee, the same color as a tattooed arm stained by relentless, a life of screeding concrete. Over rebar on floors of nearby high-rises. Cynthia and Pam mime in the corner, agonizing before a brushed aluminum cooler of 36 cakes. Pam's daughter turns 12 Tuesday. No one acknowledges Larry, the out-of-town paint salesman, who studies each case before deciding on a cinnamon cruller and cheese Danish. Time lost annoys Lewis, fidgeting with his Yankees cap while waiting online. He breaks the din of counter orders and call-ins, grousing to no one in particular that it must be 80 already, 7:15 in Ardsley Bakery. And I think this poem's pretty self-explanatory as we all begin to watch the days pass ever so quickly. It's called Shadows. I think back to the days of long shadows and wish I'd known how quickly they would pass. I used to run behind and then alongside. I stumbled when I moved in front and then faded from view. No light without darkness, no darkness without light. As we do not exist without each other, it seems, except as shadows. If only I'd known how short the long shadows would be. Harbor Song. Breathe deep all that makes you smile, and expel that which darkens your eyes and sucks the song from your heart. It is not welcome. No good comes from dwelling in space that chokes the sun and drowns hope in torrents of anger and fear. Love is your lifeboat. hold fast until you reach the harbor. This next poem is the title poem from my book, From the Porch, an interesting poem about a family of two. There was a boy, you said, curly blonde hair framing eyes as blue as a summer sky, swaddled and cradled in the harbor of your arms. You watch from the porch while I coax the team into a scraggly field we're counting on for winter sustenance. His eyes find ours as they meet to light the day. He looks just like you said. I love him so. You suckle him and he fills you, fulfills you in a way so few know, fewer ever feel. The porch is barren save for the old pine rocker. How many nights we shared splinters while drinking in the heavens and giggling about everything and nothing. The boy, silent, invisible in Grandma's crib just beyond the screen door, just beyond our reach, just beyond all equally fallow. He loves you so. This next poem is called Autumn at Apple Inn. Apple Inn is, some poems are a mixture of real and not real, and others are real and others are completely made up. But this poem is pretty real. My mother, who was diagnosed with Alzheimer's at a very early age, and was for a while in a senior living facility, and then was, because of her increasing dependence on other people, was unable to stay there. And it was like, well, I mean, what do you do? You know, it's your mother. You want her to have, you know, and she grew up in Vermont and had traveled with my dad, but Vermont was her home. I found quite by accident through a friend of mine the Apple Inn, which was just over the Vermont line in Whitehall, New York. And it's a farmhouse that sits on the edge of an apple orchard that was founded by and run by a nurse from Rutland County who wanted a place for women with Alzheimer's, particularly elderly women, where they could have a home-like situation and an environment where they would all be together in the living room, but they would all have their own bedrooms. It was communal dining in the dining room. It was a farmhouse, and it was a wonderful, wonderful place. And when she died at 92, she was the youngest in the home, and there were 6 women there. So a lovely place, and it's called Autumn at Apple Inn. Life's waning breath stifles all in the room where she rests, overlooking an orchard in an old farmhouse for old girls who don't remember. Eyes without light cannot see life blooming in the red of the apples, or recognize photographs on the dresser of children long grown and husband long dead. Your hand is smooth and face serene even as you labor to draw moments more. You held my hand when I had my tonsils out and Jimmy Merrill stole my Turtle Pete. I would bring you ice cream, but I think you're too tired. It's been far, and we are here together, alone. As we were at the beginning, Daddy was away. He's away now, too. 10 years gone. I held his hand, too, and listened in despair for the first time to autumn in real time. Lifeless leaves preening for winter with each breath. The leaves are still now until spring, dear mother. Jody's heard some of these, but she hasn't heard this one because I've not read it before. Had a conversation the other day with a friend of mine who thinks this is just a hoot. And I said, well, you know, poets are serious people. We shouldn't be reading this kind of stuff. And she said, but everybody knows someone like this, and so I think they'll appreciate it. It's called Crazy Man. With great harumph and hurrah, declares he, the craziest man alive is me. Downside up is right, upside down not wrong. Evidence certain that I'm beyond too far gone. See me implode before your eyes, he blows, checking the mirror as he goes. I simply won't last another day and night as proclaimed in a tone akin to delight. Analysis, injections, script scribed by the ream. Really, I'm so much worse than I seem. Therapists tell me there's almost no hope I'll find my way back from this precipitous slope. So waste neither time nor tears on my sorry behalf. might as well be a short-legged giraffe. Life as you know it's simply not meant to be for one so pathetic and crazy as me. He slumps and slouches, clearly in pain, no thought given to diagnosis vain. But who's to judge what's meant to be, especially for one nearly as crazy as me? This is U-turn, Y-O-U. Mild post after mild post, diner after neon-lit diner, with restrooms so fetid they remind us of the ones we wouldn't piss in at the service stations along the highway when we needed to stop for coffee, because stimulation sometimes comes in a cup, not always. We drive into a moon with the sun in our eyes, on roads worn by time and travelers exploring by rote. Back and forth and back and forth, same highway, same restrooms, same signs, burned coffee, and expectations for a new horizon, all reeking, let's turn around here. This next poem is in the book. It's entitled At the Bluff, and it is from days spent on Lake Memphremagog in Newport, Vermont. I have only to close my eyes and open wide my memory to hear tires roll slowly over the white crushed stones that led to the cottage, where each summer the family would retreat for 2 weeks to be family on vacation. Where the sky always felt a darker blue, the lake gray and cold, and the evening chill not so cold. To hear a cardinal high in the spruce thicket announce another day, the spank of a baseball into the blackened leather pocket of Dad's glove, and the old brass school bell rung to announce supper. If I squint tight my eyes, I hear laughter around an evening fire that illuminates the momentarily worried face of the youngest who asks, "Will we always come here?" I hear tires on the stone drive. This is Nomios and me. Alone, atop the mountain he sits waiting, view unobstructed in every direction. He does not see. The flock is scattered, uncertain of the way. Do they not hear the flute? I will wait, he says, to the wind, for you to come and drink with me. Wine from the harvest of a year I can't recall. Gather my flock, we'll milk, make cheese, and regale each other in song and laughter, remembrance and hope. But no one comes. They cannot hear the flute. This next poem is drawn from my childhood. It's called Dad's Favorite Bedtime Story. I'll tell you a story of Jed and Ori, and now my story's begun. I'll tell you another about their brother, and now my story is done. Okay, but just once more. Special delivery. There was a news story recently about a letter delivered after being lost in the mail for 83 years. So I wrote Death and invited him to dinner. Put an outdated stamp on a torn envelope and dropped it in the box. I said Tuesday would be good for me. Reflection tour. This is where I sleep. An unmade cot in the corner of a room where day and night intersect with hope and despair, anticipation and reality. That's where I eat. Over by the window is where I dream. Do you see? That's me by the window. This is where I am. Photographic memory. I spent the entire night looking at your photograph, remembering when last I felt that smile. You know, the one that greeted me at morning light and lit my way to day's end. The one that instigated a snowball fight or a stick flung for your puppy to fetch. The one that sent my heart tumbling for me to fetch. Your hair was a bit longer, eyes somewhat brighter. Maybe it was just the flash or the way you cocked your head. No matter, it was good to see you again and catch up. You said you were prosperous in soul and enjoying life after the photograph. This next poem is the poem that Jody selected for the chapbooks, Chickadees and Chapbooks broadside. It's called Northeast Kingdom Wind Song. She strummed the distant ridge before howling her arrival, drumming the basin, tossing ravens to new heights, juddering cedars, plucking pine, rattling birch, the din mimicking surf on Playa Guiones. We slept fitfully with an open door so not to miss that serenade. This evening, wide-eyed, waiting return of power to the cabin, we sit on the stone wall, mesmerized as if before a fire. This song rouses all, even those not standing quite so tall. And this is Forever After. To bed, arms clutching at an endeavor of contentment in space that two can fill, but one shares only with dreams or memories, an indiscernible difference. There must be stars, but their brilliance is muffled by clouds, always clouds, the breath of hope exhaled. Some time ago, I was fortunate enough, I think, to attend a writers' symposium, which will remain unnamed, location undisclosed. Interesting experience. The result was a haiku to tofu. 3 days at a writers' symposium, amazing stories, lots of bullshit. Watched a fat woman dance on the porch and learned to eat tofu. Another very serious poem that's inspired by the grocery store. I just love being in line at the grocery store and looking at all the, I don't know what you call them, they're not really magazines, whatever they are, that have all those crazy three-headed people and six-tailed fish. It's wonderful. This poem is entitled It All Adds Up. And if you go through the poem and it's in the book and you actually add everything up, it does add up. So there you go. There were 13 people ahead of me online in the express lane at the grocery today. 6 had 4 or more cans of spaghetti in one form or another, and 4 actually had boxes of noodles in one form or another, and jars of sauce. 2 had sauce but no noodles. I'm not eating at their house. Only 1 had fresh peppers, garlic, and greens. No invitation was forthcoming. Lots of beer and chips, fake cheese and tampons. It's always a dilemma whether to count items or peruse the tabloids. Can't do both, it just wouldn't do. This next poem, well actually there's, I think the next 3, yeah, we're just about through here. So these next 3 are inspired by, well, 2 of the 3 by unhappy events. One, a very good friend of mine who lost a friend of hers to suicide. And she had an interesting comment about it one day when we were chatting, and the result was this poem, which is called Olga's Last Dream. At what hour did it turn blue, purple, yellow, green, to kaleidoscope red? When did black soil the sky, sour the stream, choke your garden's rose? Dizzying dance to calliopes not heard before or since you laid down to choreograph dark. What color was the dream, Olga? I need to know. And the next 2 poems have August in common, one happier than the other. The first is a story of a young man who took his own life in August. I walked to her in summer afternoons, breathing an arresting bouquet of freshly mown grass, fused with the damp of piney woods. Oh, so good. When winter snow makes the path difficult, I relish lacing boots and buckling snowshoes to make my way, ducking snow-laden boughs to sit a while beneath arms that splinter light into renewed contemplations. This day is nondescript, hot, humid, sun, a bit of drizzle, a day not featured in the local travel brochure. Chores to be done, friends to call, family to acknowledge, love to cherish, and pain to ease. I wish Mother were here to stroke my hair and reassure me. Other visitors sing joyfully. She does not judge me. She coddles me and shares her fear, too many seasons standing alone. Her tone is soothing. She does not scold me. She invites me to join her. I sit beneath her. I miss you, brother. I miss you, father, uncles, aunts, and loves. I will rest with her now eternally, whatever that may be. Mourn your loss, then take comfort knowing here you will find me forever, passing winters into spring and wishing this August might never have come. Tucking in the happy whites. The sun sneaked beneath windmills, blighting the ridgeline over the shoulder of our pond. An evening hatch feast for the flying flycatchers that make do since the bat's demise. Your floppy rattan hat on the porch, smushed by a sack of snippers, clippers, and surplus seed packets, beside pale clay pots spilling all manner of herbs. You were in the garden, tucking in the happy whites, with sheets pulled from a lingering laundry basket. It's August, a brother's birthday, 2 days past the anniversary of a son's suicide. No need for further passings, though evening temperatures are forecast to remain just above freezing. It is August. It won't do them any harm, you say. They don't like the cold. And with that, I will turn it over to Jody. Happy to answer any questions at the end. Thank you.
And thank you, Phoenix Books. And thank you for coming. I put together some summer things because it was that kind of day. So I'm going to read first a passage from a book I translated from French about 10 years ago called The Serpent of Stars. It's by Jean Giono, and it takes place in southern France among a shepherding community. And it's a part of France where all the villages would take their sheep in the summer and up to the higher pastures and then bring them down. So that's kind of the big story, but there are little stories woven in, and one of them is about the narrator who runs into a potter at a market and then goes back to this potter's place in what he calls the brush, just out in the middle of nowhere. And the potter's name is César, and I think that's all you need to know. But I'm making you stand there, and you've just had a long walk. Have a seat. We'll just wait for you to stop sweating, and then I'll introduce you to my family. You'll stay with us tonight. We've got a place for you to sleep. You don't mind sleeping on the ground? We were there on the front bench. A bit of evening was beginning to rise up in the woods, and already its calm water, rocked in the base of the crater, was engulfing the home oaks. The earth sighed a long sigh, so soft, so calm, that no more than two or three eddies of birds rose. The wild swallows called to one another. All together they dove from the top of the sky toward our two human faces. They were like bits of dead wood in a great whirlpool. The ocean of sky rolled over us in the peaceful life of its waves. We were in the depths of that great brine of all life, at the very source of truth in life's thick mud, which is the mixture of men, beasts, trees, and rock. Under the palm of my hand I felt the slow pulse of granite. I heard the currents of sap carrying their loads. My blood throbbed in my head, and coming from the boundaries of the sky, powerful rushes of cold and heat brushed my cheeks as if from a thrown stone. The sun remained perched like a pigeon on our summit. This meadow, which protected the spring, extended farther than the waters. From the grass, where she was taking an afternoon nap, the mistress of the pottery rose with the rush of the wind. "My wife," said César. She was white and soft and fat, completely covered with fat. So much fat, so soft, that you expected to see her arms suddenly pour out of the barrels of her sleeves like mortar. Her lovely, full, round head laughed the eternal laugh of the moon. Her beautiful, black, well-groomed hair glistening with pure oil, smelled of olive and fennel. Her eyes were as big as green almonds. She stood up, and immediately 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 children began to pour from her like a spray of seeds, like drops of spring water. Suddenly she was there in the grass, like a spring rushing with children, and the last to detach herself from her, frail, red-haired, milky and salty as an April morning, was that young sorceress with the gentian eyes. These were the gestures, simple and natural. We made a meal of grass and night. On the edge of the clearing was set down a large plate full of the salad of the hills, very pale, picked in the shade, wriggling about, gleaming with oil like a nest of green spiders. We dug in with our fingers, each in turn. We were all in a circle with the plate in the middle. A large slab of bread in the left hand served as plate and napkin, and when the bread had soaked up enough olive oil, had wiped the fingers well enough, we ate it, and it tasted like a harvest afternoon. The night we munched with the salad. The night overflowed from the crater in slow gushes, and our mouths were full of night when we bit into the bread crusts rubbed with garlic. So we had those grasses to eat, and then the night, and it was a night in the brush, and then those strange yellow glances from the 14-year-old witch. It all provided food for the belly and the brain. I don't know if the brain really had its separate share. I think rather that everything, salad, oil, dark bread, night, and the gentian glances, they all went into the belly. There they all made weight and warmth. There they were all changed into saps and smells, so much so that finally we were drunk from the triple power of the sky, the earth, and truth. That's like the ideal summer meal as far as I'm concerned. And these are a couple summer poems from my other book called Rooms and Their Airs, which is upstairs. And in this book there's a series of poems that the titles came from Native American names for the moons. So I wrote these over a number of years. I found the names and I decided what the title of the poem should be before I wrote the poem, and then my assignment to myself was to come up with the poem in the month of that moon. And if I didn't do it, I had to wait till the next year. So it took me a few years to finish it. But for July, there were two names I liked, Hey Moon and Thunder Moon. So rather than choosing this one, it's just called Hey Moon, Thunder Moon. Hey Moon, Thunder Moon. Where among the sunlit bales is there room for human grief? Not here, not here, not here, not here, not here, not here. Crickets sing till sky cracks, and down pour the 10,000 forms for it, all lost on the indiscernible moon, even with her dark side, her different names. And then this is Red Moon, which would be August. Mid-August, windows rolled down, cigarette lit, and it smells good, smells like freedom. I cooked at the steakhouse all summer and slept late and lay hot and oiled in the sun each afternoon. He drove me to work. My mother squinted up at us. She saw how his eyes burned, how he loomed over her, the slick arc of his grin. He lit up in the parking lot, hot tars still bubbling, engine running, while I closed down the grill, bagged the charred bits. I unpinned my name tag. He knew of a peach orchard not far. The white peaches would be ripe by now. I didn't smoke, but I love the embered end of this. The red ash falling away, heat rising from us, so much shimmering, that moon. No one could say it wasn't living. No one could call it dust. And this is One Day. And I don't know if it really matters. It doesn't. It might matter a little. It looks like this. So it like is short and then long and short. One day lily, orange on a green stem, studded with so many tenses in which it has never opened, will never open, opens its mouth wide. From its yellow throat thrusts all 7 tongues into simple present, breaks into one unfaltering now. So those are the summer poems from that book. And this one's a little harder to deal with. This new book has all kinds of things in it. And a lot of them are object poems. Like there's a whole section of poems that were made on things, and they're photos of them in the back. And what I have been doing is I've been bringing the things along and actually reading the things to these readings. But right now they're all in a show in Montpelier at Vermont College of Fine Arts. They've been up for like a month, and so I don't have them. So I have a couple photos of them that are bigger than the photos in here, and I'm going to just read ones that, you know, work okay if you don't have the thing. I mean, my feeling about these poems is they really are the object, and they're not what's in here. So kind of keep that in mind, okay? And the first one is a mobile. So it's just like pieces of language that move around like this, and on the page it looks like that. And it is, since Mars won't be this close to Earth again. Since Mars won't be this close to Earth again in 60,000 years, it comes to light through a haze of stars, so far off, space turns to time, when, to where, among light years, I am this moment of perception. And this one is on a box. It looks like that. And inside the box is a butterfly. And so when you read it, like the title is here, but you would hold it and then like have to turn the box around, and hopefully the butterfly wouldn't fall out as you did that. And it's called Look Inside to See If You've Won. That summer, butterflies flew regularly into oncoming traffic. We had become a race of giants and could not stop for them. We drove our inflated cars to our box stores and filled our giant shopping carts. Give us the images, we cried. On the sides of delivery trucks there were giant tomato slices, squares of yellow cheese, free Sundays with chicken promotions. Someone had to arrange the letters on the sign. We had become a race of giants, every generation outgrowing the last. White admirals hovered at the level of the grills. They were doing what they've always done, which is to flutter. Our vehicles had the blunt, aggressive faces of tanks. With fists too big for our forks, we cleaned our plates and ordered the dessert with sprinkles. The butterflies were not trying to tell us anything, and anyway, we wouldn't have noticed. It was such a pretty drive. And this one is on a piece of glass. It was a window pane that came from an old barn, and it looks like that. And if I were able to really read it, I would hold it up and I would be reading it, and I would be seeing you through it, and you would be seeing me through it. So it's called Not Even Glass, because it is not even glass. Not even glass keeps me from the other side, where a dying moth, when life already crawling, when life already egg, beats its wings against the pane. And a meteor will stun me if I can stay awake. And a verb slows enough to hold that glass is really fluid and ripples over time. And then because I was writing on things, I ended up writing on things like bravery. So this is on bravery. And it's called One of Magic's Most Beautiful Illusions. One of magic's most beautiful illusions, the escape artist announces as the stage lights are lowered, he He folds his wife into an impossibly small box, then sticks swords through it. He saws the top half from the bottom, spins her head one way, her legs another. We can still see her face. She's smiling. Now he opens the box. He offers her his hand. Smiling, she steps out. But she isn't smiling, is she, when he chains his own wrists and ankles and climbs into the vat full of water and locks it from the inside? No, she's counting the seconds. She's checking her watch. She's holding her breath, because this is serious. You can tell he's doing something very brave, and he is really in danger. And then this one is on fear, sort of its companion piece. 1-800-FEAR. We'd like to talk to you about fear, they said. So many people live in fear these days. They drove up, all 4 of them in a small car. Nice boy, they said. Beautiful dogs, they said. So friendly. The man ahead of the woman, the other 2 waiting in the drive. I was outside digging up the garden. No one home, I said. What are you selling anyway? I'm not interested. I said, well, you have a nice day, they said. Here's our card. There's a phone number you can call anytime. Any other houses down this road? Anyone else live here? We'd like to talk to them about living in fear. And there's a couple kind of longer series of poems in this book that I made while I was doing work in different sites. And one of them, I was at the Frost Place in New Hampshire, and there had been a big storm and all these trees were down, and I was like working with all these fallen trees. And another one was at Salt Lake, in the Great Salt Lake at Salt Lake City, with a friend of mine who was making little forays into the lake from different points around it. And I had not spent time there before, but one thing that really struck me about that area is that it's a gigantic lake. It's the largest salt lake, I think, in the world. And people who live in Salt Lake City don't go there. It's like they don't, it has nothing to do with their lives there. And it just struck me, being not from the place, as a kind of strange relationship to this, you know, environmental, like this huge thing that should have in some way been the center of their lives, and just wasn't even visible. So this is called Great Salt Lake, and there are 2 parts, the North Shore and then the South Shore. And I refer to the spiral jetty, which is a big land art installation that Robert Smithson did in the North Shore. He built this huge spiral jetty right in the lake, and then for many years the water level rose and it had totally disappeared, and now it's uncovered again. So, North Shore, Great Salt Lake, 1. Spiral jetty that Robert Smithson left, his question mark, hanging out there in the question that needs to be asked. So huge. How an entire city can ignore it, take the name, Salt Lake. So often now I'm searching for a word and I can't find it, have to skirt around, say it another way. Look at any word long enough and you will see it open into a series of faults, a terrain of particles, each containing its own void, Smithson wrote. But also, the names of minerals and the minerals themselves do not differ from each other. Salt cuts the feet. It hurts to look into the lake water, glistening, dead. Pelicans float up near the oil seep, where I return a skull to a pair of wing bones. Empty cartridges everywhere, the shorelines mostly used for a shooting range. I collect them, making a nest on driftwood. A series of faults, these shells, each containing its own void. Still, what I want to say with them, the words, hatch, don't they? All beak and broken feather, the crystals grow. And this is South Shore. The South Shore of the lake is kind of a gentler shore, and really feels like you're in the midst of or on the verge of a primordial sea. Placenta means flat cake, a fluke. This old sea floor, salt flat, of course, after birth. It can't support what life I am now, but what life was I? From the access road, wet ooze, my footprints, the beached grebes, wading ankle deep into brine shrimp, rounding back into egg. From the highway, who'd guess we were viable, a lifeline of matted feathers, rank behind barbed wire, who'd check? Yet I am remembered when the lake takes me in. What puts on my shoes? What blows toward the road, leaving against the fence that ragged sack? And this is called Milk. Baby pronghorn carcass splayed toward Antelope Island, neck twisted, twisted like a loose tooth, like a rag wrung into a teat for the orphaned young. The mother licked just once before she turned to nurse her own grief, rising thick as that longing that is both thirst and hunger before they separate and are given names. And this is the last poem in the book called Lawn Furniture. Lawn furniture looks out to stars so far away they've long stopped burning. Unfathomable mystery. Chair I always sit in, no emptier than the chair I never do. And I'm going to read just a few new ones. The thing about a book coming out is it was usually done about 4 years before it appears, so there's lots of work in between. And these are all stemmed originally from dreams and all involve animals, so I think of them as animal dreams. And they're seasonally arranged, fall, winter, spring, and then we're back to summer again. And they look like this. And none of them have titles. Deer season, one dressed and hung upside down from a tree. That was okay, but when the hunters got closer, all the trees turned to deer. I tried to elbow them aside like winter coats on a rack, but their prongs kept tripping me, their heads swaying heavy hems. Well, it's to be expected, living where I do. Just beyond the clothesline, on a steep slope, one bison stands grazing when a mountain lion leaps on its back. But we don't have mountain lions here. Well, the catamount, only it's extinct. When her cry woke me, I knew to take it in, though why? Porcupine pills barbed like fishhooks rose from my haunches. I had birthed and raised my child, the winter diet of bark expanding now to whimper, to howl, to moan. It's wild, yet it lets me nuzzle because it knew me as a young bear. What luck! My tongue along the rim of its mouth. A black bear's mouth isn't this black. Its lips rolled back, teeth dangerous as cubs. My sister and I, laughing, whispered far into the night. Your eyes are the strangest color. She leaned right across the table to say so. I was taken aback, having always liked the color of my eyes. Still, I knew what she meant. My pupils, convex, rectangular as a goat's. I gazed at her salad through the wire fencing, a small fist, stuffed clover and grass blades. Thank you. And thanks for coming, and we'll hang around if you'd like us to.